Washoe County Library System welcomes you to a terrific history series that delves into fascinating Nevada topics with local experts. The Nevada Historical Society presents High Noon with Neal Cobb. I'm super excited about today's very special program, Rhyolite, The Life and Death of a Boomtown, with Howard Goldbaum, Emeritus Professor at UNR's Reynolds School of Journalism. Imagine going to sleep and waking up one day as the lone resident in a once booming town. What exactly happened to Rhyolite? Well, Harold Goldbaum is here to shed some light. My name is Terry, and I'm delighted to be hosting today for Washoe County Library System and the Nevada Historical Society. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Sherry Hayes Zorn.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, John, who is our tech behind the scenes. And welcome, everybody. We're so happy to have you here today. And we just always want to thank the Washoe County Library System for being such a wonderful partner for us to make these programs accessible for anybody at any time. And we've been doing this series online now with the libraries for over 4 years, and we love it, and we hope you do too. This is a great opportunity for us to share history free to the public, and it's preserved for future generations. So it's a great way to share interesting speakers and their areas of expertise. So without further ado, let me introduce our host, my good friend and our good supporter and honorary curator, Neal Cobb, who's been a longtime supporter for the Nevada Historical Society. And without him, the series would not have continued. And we so appreciate Neal's generosity to make this a great series with his contacts. And I'm always happy to work with you every month, Neal. So, hey, Neal.
Thank you, Sherry. Our speaker today, Howard Goldbaum, is an emeritus professor at the Reynolds School of Journalism at the University of Nevada, Reno. He taught courses in media, and that includes photography, audio, video, web design, virtual reality imaging. He has done this for the last 17 years. He also served as director of the school's graduate program. Before that, he was a professor and director of the multimedia program at Bradley University in Illinois. His long career in media included years working as a journalist, and a multimedia producer. So at this time, High Noon welcomes our speaker today, Howard Goldbaum.
Thank you very much, Neal. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
I'm going to start right off and share my screen, and we're going to talk about Rhyolite. And I want to mention that, see if I can hide this. I first went to Rhyolite when I was teaching at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, in 1983. As a photography professor, I enjoyed nothing more than taking my students on what I called photo safaris to spend time documenting small towns in central Illinois. But in 83, I wanted to try something different. So in a move that would make today's university risk management folks go nuts, I rented an older 33-foot motorhome from a private party and recruited a dozen students for a summer session photo safari class. Soon we were headed west. After a few days, I had my first view of Rhyolite, where we parked the motorhome for the night right in the middle of the ghost town. For the first time in my life, I heard coyotes howling at the moon. There was nothing like today's virtual reality or even digital photography at that point. I was using and helping the students use a 4x5 view camera, the kind that requires you to put a dark cloth over the camera and over your head. Later photo safaris returned me to Rhyolite, But by then I learned it was so much easier to fly into Vegas and rent a motorhome there. We always spent our first night on the road in Rhyolite, and it was always the same delightfully destabilizing change from our lives in Peoria. But tonight I'm going to share with you the results of my more recent documentary fieldwork and research into what is the most visited ghost town in Nevada. You can get the basic facts about the place after spending a few minutes with Professor Google. So instead, what I'm going to do is present a rather idiosyncratic travelogue, focusing on the details of Rhyolite's rise and fall that I found most engaging. We're going to be bouncing back and forth between a conventional PowerPoint slideshow and parts of the virtual reality tour from the Rhyolite page on the All Around Nevada website. And let's look at one of those right now. What you see right here is me, not looking up, but looking down at my control for the drone, which is photographing Rhyolite's Cook Bank. And the use of the drone in documenting this project enabled us to get inside the structures, which, like the Cook Bank, are now surrounded by barbed wire fencing. I'm very pleased to be able to do this presentation today for the Nevada Historical Society, as their image archive has been critical not only to this project, but also to my earlier book on the construction of the Central Pacific Railroad. For both of these all-consuming projects, I imagined myself inhabiting the mental space of each of these photographers, as well as their contemporary environments. Alfred A. Hart documented the progress of the railroad from Sacramento into Utah. A.E. Holt had a darkroom and a photo business within his Rhyolite real estate office, was on the scene for all of the town's most important milestones. The 3D railroad photographs of Alfred A. Hart were published in 1912 by the Nevada State Railroad Museum in a book co-authored by the museum's Wendell Huffman. A.E. Holt was a photographer and entrepreneur in early days of Rhyolite. I would like to acknowledge, of course, the Nevada Historical Society, because very fortunately, a descendant of the photographer gifted his entire Rhyolite output to the society. Many of the images I'll be showing tonight and those on the website, which I just finished yesterday, by the way, have never been published. This 1907 A. Holt ad states in the small print, "Free to all interested parties, I will send a Kodak picture of Rhyolite." This ad, too, is in the Historical Society's possession. Someday there may be a Holt monograph I would like to create, but for today, my Rhyolite project was envisioned as a page for my All Around Nevada website, which is a website supported in part by the School of Journalism at UNR. This is the Rhyolite page on All Around Nevada, and many of the resources from this page I'll be showing you today in this talk, but there are many, many others that I'm not going to have time to show you, but they're all there on the web page. A VR tour is the centerpiece of the web page. A VR tour was done over a course of several different visits. It was done both with the drone and with a conventional on-the-ground VR camera apparatus, and that's what's enabled us to do the work inside some of the structures, such as the railroad station and the bottle house. It's what sets this website apart from the many other websites that feature the ghost town. because using the drone, we were able to position the VR camera within structures unsafe to enter on foot or to provide unique perspectives. I'm going to leave this up for a bit so that those of you who want to have an easy way to get to this URL can take a picture of this QR code. My wife and I began working on the Rhyolite VR documentation in 2022, and we returned each spring for a few days of field work in 23 and 24. The in-person archival research, both at the Historical Society and at the UNR archives, special collections, was done within the same time period. Other material was located at online resources, which were all listed in the credits on the webpage. With cooperation from the BLM and the site custodian Carl Olson, we were allowed access into locked structures that are normally closed to visitors, and completed the VR tour inside of these structures, some of them, like the railroad station, littered with debris and requiring very careful access because of the darkness and the clutter. I'll show the QR code again at the end of the presentation if you weren't able to photograph it at this point. This is Alfred A. Holt's panorama of the Montgomery Shoshone mine, which was a mining venture expanded with Charles Schwab's millions, and they added a railroad spur and a lot of technology to the processing. Now, I want to point out something as we go to this VR page. This is a standard resolution photograph, but using modern technology, as I did for all the 20th century, early 20th century panoramas, I was able to increase the resolution to make it possible to create a navigable virtual reality panorama from rather low resolution still photograph in the archives of the Historical Society. In the 2 years since I've done this, technology of AI detail expansion, resolution expansion has gotten much better than when I did this. So I may need to go back and do the some of the panoramas over again. This, of course, is in Alfred A. Holt's album, and we're going to have a deeper look into that album later on. This is July 4th, 1907 in Rhyolite. Just 4 years earlier, there were no buildings, no roads, and no people in what was to become Rhyolite. 5 years later, in 1908, there were 6,000 optimists living in an area served by 3 different railroads. For a time, it was the 4th largest town in Nevada. But less than a decade afterwards, silence returned to this remote desert valley as only a handful of people remained. By 1909, there were only 800 people living in Rhyolite, and most of the buildings were vacant. This photo is from the 1920s, the first period of Rhyolite ghost town tourism. I kind of wish I could have taken pictures and done a VR tour then, because there was so much more to see. But a lot of it was stripped away, either by the owners of the buildings looking to set them up in the next Boomtown, or by souvenir hunters or others looking for building materials. The most visited ghost town in Nevada. You can see some tourists from Los Angeles here going on a road trip. Their entire album is in a museum in California. A couple of them actually climbed up on top of the chimney. This is the same group of tourists in one of the several bottle houses in Rhyolite that don't exist anymore. I'm sure they made away with a few bottles. This bottle house does still exist. It's the bottle house, and the reason it exists is largely due to its inclusion in a movie after the demise of Rhyolite. Why do we seek out ghost towns? This ghostly looking picture is me, a shadow of me, taking the picture, staying in front of the plaque to the cemetery in Rhyolite. All kinds of reasons why we tend to seek out ghost towns. The evidence of another culture is probably what has drawn me, the sense of connection with what's in the past. This is the plaque in the cemetery that I was standing in front of in the picture of my shadow. This enduring bronze is placed here to the blessed memory of those who sleep herein, and to the remembrance of all others who came this way and opened up this great Nevada desert mining world, by those who cared. April 1959. So let's talk about the history of Rhyolite, a short history of a brief life. I'm not going to read out all these dates, but I'll leave this slide up long enough so that the audience members can read what they wish. The discovery of gold in an uninhabited desert landscape occurred in August of 1904. By May of the following year, there were 20 saloons in what was a barren landscape. The first hotel, located in Bullfrog, the predecessor town just west of Rhyolite, was opened in July of 1905. This is that hotel, the Southern Hotel. This picture shows the Kimball Brothers stagecoach leaving the Southern Hotel in Rhyolite for Skidoo, California, another boomtown. In September of 1905, one of Nevada's first U.S. senators, William Stewart, was so confident of Rhyolite's future that he moved his home and office from Washington into Rhyolite when he left the Senate. In March of 1907, the town stock exchange opened. This is an A.E. Holt photograph taken at the opening of the stock exchange. We'll look at this again later when we get into our Holt gallery. In June of 1908, when the Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad Depot was completed, it was noted as the finest railroad depot in the state of Nevada. This structure remains, and it had other lives we'll talk about later after it was a depot, and it can be explored in detail within the VR tour. The town school was completed in December of 1908. Beatty residents continued servicing the debt on building the school for decades. The The bonds were not paid off until 1978, long after Rhyolite had become a ghost town. This is the completed school in Rhyolite, and it's unclear whether the photo was taken right after it was completed or after it was deserted. Due to the building supplies in the picture, I'm thinking it was taken right after it was completed, before it was actually opened. In July of 1909, the Sambor map, which we'll look at later, showed the Rhyolite population had shrunk to 800, and the next year there was no more electricity. In 1911, the major mine closed after producing only $2 million in gold. And in 1920, the census showed only 14 residents left in the town. This is a 1969 photo, and it shows the last 7 residents of Rhyolite who were actually living there when it was in its glory. Mary Thompson, the youngster second from the right, is 70, and her husband, Tommy Thompson, playing the accordion, is 82. The woman at the center is Bessie Moffett, who operated a gold shop in the town. What drove the optimism in Rhyolite? Well, to the north, the town of Tonopah was the site of one of the richest mining booms in the West. So silver was discovered there in 1900, and by 1921, $121 million in silver had been extracted. Goldfield had a boom from 1906 to 1910, and in 1910 it was the largest city in Nevada, had a population of more than 20,000. But by 1910, gold production was in decline, and the population dropped, and then in 1913, a major flood damaged Goldfield, and 23 of fire burned most of the buildings. Today, there are less than 250 residents in what remains in Goldfield. Ernest Ed Cross, shown on the left, and Frank Shorty Harris, shown on the right, were the prospecting partners who discovered gold in the Bullfrog area, which included Rhyolite, on August 9th, 1904. Unfortunately, issues with gambling and alcohol caused Shorty Harris to quickly sign over his stake after a night of drinking for a fraction of its value. The more stolid citizen, Ed Cross, sold his share and returned to his ranch near Escondido, California. A rich man. This is Shorty Harris, probably photographed at Deathwater's Badwater Basin. He was one of the great Death Valley area characters. He said in his biographical description of finding the gold, quote, "I let out a yell, and Ed knew something had happened, so he came running up as fast as he could. When he got close enough to hear, I yelled, 'Ed, we've got the world by the tail.' We broke off several more pieces, and they were like the first, just lousy with gold. The rock was green, almost like turquoise, spotted within with big chunks of yellow metal, and looked a lot like the back of a frog." And that gave us an idea, Shorty went on, for naming our claim. So we called it the Bullfrog. It looked like a real fissure vein, the kind that goes deep. It has lots of real stuff in it. So Bullfrog it was, and that was the name of the first gold camp there, where lots were for sale in this ad in the Los Angeles Herald of October 1905. What a procession, the Rhyolite Herald recalled. Men on foot, burros, mule teams, freights, light rigs, saddle outfits, automobiles, houses on wheels, all coming down the line from Tonopah Goldfield, raising a string of dust 100 miles long. No hyperbole in that, of course, but that was the kind of hoopla that accompanied Boomtown organization in the state of Nevada, and was especially prevalent in Rhyolite and Goldfield. Wild-eyed optimism, a civic boosterism, unbridled by any skeptical journalistic inquiry, characterized the town's several newspapers. There's nothing but optimism in any of the stories in the Rhyolite Herald or any of the other newspapers. The man who authored a biography of the Rhyolite Herald's publisher wrote, "In olden days, perhaps 5 years ago, I thought I knew how Boomtown developed. If we're a mining camp, according to folklore, some hardy prospector or his mule would uncover a huge body of rich ore and develop claims to build up a town. Then, according to plan, the ore would be extracted and milled, and finally the mines would play out. Everyone would get the hell out of here." The reality was different. The mines themselves probably produced more gilt-edged stock certificates than gold-filled ore. The townsite agent or stock speculator commanded more attention than the honest miner, and the women and children often outnumbered the men. So the real economy of the boomtown of Rhyolite and many others was not the extraction of precious metals, but the marketing and remarketing of stock certificates. This is a 1905 panorama of Bullfrog, the town that predated Rhyolite, a tent city really at this point, done by a photographer by the name of Calvin Bullock in 1905. If we take a closer look at the panoramic picture, you can see at the bottom he writes, "The panoramic effect is more clearly shown by holding the two ends of the picture together, putting your head in the middle, looking in toward the different points of the compass." So in 1905, what this photographer who did the panoramic photograph using an early panoramic camera, what he's suggesting is something he cannot imagine that you can do with modern virtual reality. And so I can do that right now by going to this web page on my website where I've taken this photographer's panorama and enhanced its detail from the rather small image at the Historical Society and created a virtual reality panorama of what it would be like to stand in the center of Bullfrog in 1905 and look around to see the 360-degree scene in front of you. Go back to the PowerPoint. Let's take a look at several different pictures that show the growth of Rhyolite. This is A.E. Holt's photograph taken in December 1905. And then not quite a year later, his photograph in 1906, no more tents, very few tents, solid buildings. Then in January 1908, the height of Rhyolite's population growth, perhaps 4,000 permanent residents. But a year later, there was only 800 left in town. This is a panorama that Holt took from atop Ladd Mountain, one of the mountains facing the town. We can visit it in virtual reality. As before, I've taken the Holt image at the Historical Society and enlarged it to show more detail than is possible in the original image. And with that detail, you can zoom in and see more to the photograph. Next, I'm going to share with you a VR panorama taken from the exact same spot today. What I did was use the landscape and the enduring geographical features to position my drone exactly where A.E. Holt was when he took his panorama, and now you can see what's left. The Sanborn maps were created for insurance underwriting purposes. They show fire prevention and protection details. The Rhyolite map is dated July 1908, and it indicates that by that point there was only a population of 800 people, with most buildings, as it says here, the town is mostly abandoned. And the version I have here is corrected from September 1812. Now, what I'm going to show you is a VR feature in the website that is a directly overhead drone view of Rhyolite. But if you click the M button, you can see it overlaid with the view of the Sanborn map. So you can see how many buildings were once there, and you can remove the map overlay and see the few buildings that are left. What I like to do with my documentation projects is to find historical resources that enable me to combine them with modern technologies to gain insight, further insight into the archaeological remains. Now let's take a detailed look at A.E. Holt's album of Rhyolite photographs, which, as I said before, are located in the archives of the Historical Society, and I want to thank them again for allowing me access to the high-resolution images. Hats off to Sarah Patton, who worked with me on that project. One of the wonderful things about Holt's photographs is how they show everyday people, not just the leading citizens, stock speculators, but the hard rock miners who probably came hoping to make their fortunes and probably left without meeting that goal at all. This is at the Gold Bar mine in November of 1905. Holt began his work in Rhyolite by making photographs of each of the mines because he thought that he would do this, and the mine owners would use his photographs in helping to sell stock in their mines. It wasn't easy in 1905 or 6 to take photographs inside a darkened mine stope, even with the lamp lighting available. This is from the Denver mine. The first ore from Rhyolite came out of the Denver mine. In fact, Alfred A. Holt's photograph, probably set up, but very dramatic, shows the first load of Denver mine ore leaving Bullfrog, 1906. The 12-horse team was a very expensive way to transport the ore to Goldfield. This was not going to be profitable in the long term. That's why the 3 railroads came to Rhyolite. Holt also made photo postcards. Today, they're very much sought after by collectors. Each one was individually curated in the darkroom in the back of his real estate office. Breakfast time for Maud, Rhyolite's famous pet burro, at the Newton Grill restaurant. If you go to Rhyolite today, you'll likely encounter one or more burros wandering among the ruins. In fact, the barbed wire protecting the ruins today has dual purpose of keeping the burros from further eroding the structures by stumbling onto the loose walls, and also to keep souvenir hunters out of the interior of the remains of the buildings. This shows the upper grades of public school. It's a whole photo dated April of 1907. I learned in my research that there were so many students in different grades that the teacher had to keep track of that she had a nervous breakdown and had to retire. This was the original school, a much larger school that, as I said, it wasn't paid off until the late 80s, was built as the town was in decline. J.R. Lane owned this business, which sold gas and oil, as well as hay and grain. His wife Lucy is standing in the center of this 1908 group picture. Holt labeled this Indians in front of post office. I'm including this to remind us that at one point there were people living on this land, but they were not after the gold. I love Holt's photograph of the members of the stock exchange, each looking so proud and smoking their cigars, each knowing that in their optimistic view, they were on a path to riches by trading their certificates of the different gold mines in Rhyolite. This was dated March 25th, 1907, the day the stock market opened up in Rhyolite. It had 75 members. This is a miners' union parade coming down Golden Street in Rhyolite, February of 1907. The big sign, you can't see it in the image, but it says, "Are they going to hang my papa?" It was all about a protest about miners who were arrested that year in Colorado and threatened with the death penalty for their agitation. Holt labeled this picture Circus Day Rhyolite. The Sells Floater Circus paraded through town. It was reportedly seen by 1,500 people. This traveling circus, later absorbed to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey, was known for acts including trapeze artists, boxers, trick riders, and unique performers such as one labeled, and I quote, the two-headed Mexican. Holt photographed a panorama of the circus in Rhyolite. I'm going to share that with you now. Again, the details enlarged, but this is the circus tents. Truly a three-ring circus set up on the outskirts of town. There's the town of Rhyolite. And let's go back to the circus tents. And now let's go back to the PowerPoint. Holt labeled this picture, four-horse stage loaded with passengers for Rhyolite. With the technology of photography at the time, it would have been very difficult to take this without carefully prepositioning the camera and tripod and working in concert with the stage driver to slow down or come to a stop at a certain point. This photograph is dated 1906. This is a large group in formal attire. I don't know what group it was, but they're posed inside what was Rhyolite's Opera House. It's a Holt photograph from 1908. Holt labeled this picture Boarding House Men, 1905. Single men who came to Rhyolite just with a dream and a grub stake and bunked together and worked perhaps in one mine or different mines. This Holt photograph shows the Shriners parading through town. And this photograph shows financier Charles M. Schwab leaving Rhyolite. That's Schwab in the front seat on the side facing us, young man with a lot of money who invested in the Montgomery mine and made it a success for a few years. This is a last Holt photograph in this album that I'm going to show right now, because I want to talk a bit about this sign and who William Stewart was. This sign was rescued by the director of the Nevada Historical Society, and it's now on display in the museum. William Stewart was one of the principal authors of the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1870, which gave voting rights to the formerly enslaved citizens. Here he is shown on a mule in Rhyolite. Actually, Stewart was smart enough as a lawyer to know that if you built just outside the boundaries of Rhyolite in the town of Bullfrog, he wouldn't have to pay taxes to Rhyolite, so that's what he did. This is Stewart shown in his law offices, and the ruins of this building can be visited in the VR tour. Stewart was also a principal author of the 1866 National Mining Act, which permitted free access by miners and mining companies to public lands. And the senator also managed the 1872 National Mining Act, which is still in effect today, which reaffirmed this principle. He set up his office in Rhyolite as an 80-year-old after completing his 5th term as one of Nevada's first U.S. senators. His 1,200-volume law library in town was the finest in the state, with the exception of the library in Carson City. Stewart could not have anticipated how the advances in mechanized mining, which can chew up an entire hillside in a way that a miner and his mule could not have anticipated. Modern mining has, in fact, removed much of the mountain where Rhyolite's principal mine, the Montgomery Shoshone, was located. This is the Barrick gold mine in town. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Depot, in keeping with the prominence as a mining center, Rhyolite was serviced by 3 railroads: Las Vegas to Tonopah, the Tonopah and Tidewater, and the Bullfrog Goldfield. The first train from Las Vegas and Tonopah from Vegas entered Rhyolite at 7 p.m. on December 14th, 1906, with about 100 passengers. It was a big deal for a young mining town to be serviced by one railroad, but 3 railroads were almost unheard of in the history of Nevada. With 3 railroads, it seemed that Rhyolite was destined to be the largest boom camp in the state, and the few boom years made that prediction seem inevitable. By 1907, the railroad was hauling 50 freight cars per day. The large volume required a large depot to handle it, and the Las Vegas depot built the building that you can see today. It cost about $130,000, and today's money would be worth $4,481,000. Now, this depot can be entered in the VR tour, and I'm going to just take you quickly into that now. The building is surrounded by a tall barbed wire fence to protect it, but with the permission of the BLM and the site caretaker, Carl Olson, I was able to not only go into the building, but spend hours there documenting it in all its detail. We can go through the building and see all the offices. We can actually go upstairs into, this is totally dark, by the way, kind of scary, into the rooms in the depot that in its later life were used as a brothel. One brothel room, another one. Go back to the PowerPoint. The dilapidated caboose was used as a gas station after when Rhyolite was a ghost town, and that too can be visited. This is interesting, so I'm going to share this because the caboose is behind barbed wire, and it's very dilapidated. And when you get closer to it, when you get inside of it, you'll see that its floorboards are missing in places. But from the outside, I was able to fly the drone into the caboose to do a full 360 documentation of the interior of this building, which actually is a significant structure for a couple of reasons, and I'll point out afterwards. We can also go in the bottle house. I see we're running out of time now, so I'm going to not take you in VR, though you can do it easily on the website. I want to talk about Mona Bell, which is one of the legends about Rhyolite. Her story is a common one. She was a prostitute in town, and she got in with bad company, and ultimately she was murdered by her her lover, who was became a cause celeb in Rhyolite because even as a prostitute, well, especially as a prostitute, she had a lot of friends in town, and her killer was caught and brought to justice, and eventually sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder. But what's interesting, perhaps not unique to Rhyolite, but one of the staples of Nevada boomtown or ghost town folklore, is that she could not be buried in town because she was a prostitute, so they had to bury her on the outskirts. She's not in the cemetery. Her grave is here on the outskirts. Of course, in truth, her grave is in her hometown in Nebraska, where her body was taken after her death. And this grave you see in Rhyolite is festooned by visitors to the ghost town who feel obliged to put trinkets on her grave. But actually, it was a fake grave put in there by the owner of the souvenir shop in Rhyolite, who thought it would help drive tourism to her shop. So this is going to end the slideshow part of this, and I want to give thanks to all the people who helped with this project. And I guess at this point now, I am going to try to answer any questions that I can.
Oh, that was great, Howard. We have quite a few questions from different people. And so let me get started here. Can you tell us what materials were used on the Cook built bank building? Does it look like it's cement block, or that was the question?
It's built of quarried stone. I don't know where the stone came from, but the building is one of the most photographed, probably the most photographed ruin in Nevada, and it's part of the structure is cement, but it's also quarried stone. It's a very rich construction. It was rich woodwork and mahogany staircases, and it was no expense was spared in building this structure. But all the things of value, including the massive safe, were stripped away once the town failed.
Howard. Oh, there you go. You briefly froze there for a second, Howard.
Sorry.
No,
It
no,
wasn't
absolutely.
intentional.
No. And I had saw in your kind of your bullet points, but there was a question, did Rhyolite have electricity and phone service?
Yes, had both. and it thrived until the electricity was cut off. And I figure that's one of
1910.
the dates that I had in my chronology.
But
And
it said street lights, so would the smaller population, would they still
no,
have had?
no, all electricity was cut off to the town.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's no
Uh,
elect. There is there's a few residents there now that do have electric service. Like for example, the caretakers. The caretaker has service, and there's a couple of other houses. So electricity was restored to the town.
so then I guess that would be a follow-up question, the last picture of like this last seven people that lived there in the 60s, 50s, 60s. Um, they did not have any power, or did
I
they?
think by that time the power was brought back to the town. Uh,
Okay, okay. I was because I was like, well, if Gracie has a trinket shop, you would think that she would want to have service. There was another question here. You mentioned the school was completed in 1908, but the bond went on and on until 78. Do you know anything about who actually paid the bond in the end?
yes, the debt was transferred to the citizens of Beatty, who probably uh,
Oh,
were quite unhappy with that, and they I don't know the mechanics of the politics of why that happened. Maybe uh, when a town declares bankruptcy, it has to have some successor to pay its bills, and the bank extracted the money from the citizens of Beatty.
okay. Okay, because yeah, as I say, if it's being dissolved, yeah, you would think they'd have to have clear um, books. So that's interesting. Um, we do have another question. Was A.E. Holt a real estate agent by trade and a photographer for pleasure?
Well, I don't think there was any licensing for real estate at that time. He came to Rhyolite with the publisher of the first newspaper, Clemens, who was the publisher of the Rhyolite Herald. He claimed he was an assistant to Clement, the publisher, and then he left the newspaper business and became interested in speculative real estate and photography.
Okay. Okay. Um, so we do have another question, and I think you kind of answered it, but do you know if Stewart's law office was officially in Bullfrog or Rhyolite? Because you mentioned that he built just outside
It
the
wasn't
town
Bullfrog.
limits.
It was in Bullfrog.
Okay. Okay. And I know that when he left, I believe it was due to health at the time when he left in '08. And then Jeannie, where our founder, was exploring through Nevada during the summer. And then that fall went down there and was able to get permission to retrieve his law library, which became our first library collection materials, but including the sign that she literally ripped off the building as she was getting ready to leave. So we do have another question for you. How easy or difficult is it to get to Rhyolite?
It's extremely easy because it's on a very good paved road, and it's one of the entrances to Death Valley. It goes right to the town of Furnace Creek in Death Valley. If you go from, and many people do, they go from Nevada Route 95 from Beatty to Death Valley. You pass right by the entrance to Rhyolite, just about 3 miles after uh, heading west out of Beatty.
Okay. Let's see. I have another question here. Why was it called Rhyolite? Was there a rare rock found in the area?
Rhyolite is a rock formation
Oh,
that is prevalent in the area.
okay. Um, and somebody asked, they missed the introduction and they wanted to know a little bit more about you and if you live in Nevada, Howard.
I live in Reno.
He just travels a lot, so.
I do travel. I do get around.
Um, So I guess we have a couple of people just thanking you for this great presentation and talking about they love the historic panoramas and the drone work that you've done. Great presentation. And there we do have another question. Was the site of the Montgomery Shoshone mine removed by the new open pit mine, or was it
The,
kind of
it's,
consolidated or
it's,
dissolved?
it's completely covered by the spoils from the modern open pit mine. And if you look at it in the VR tour, you can go, you can follow the spur, the rail bed of the spur that goes from the from Rhyolite directly to the side of the Montgomery Shoshone up until the point where that spur line is covered by spoils from the modern mine. You can go all the way up to the end point of that spur line in the VR tour.
Okay.
My wife and I hiked along that rail bed, which is a wonderful hike. You see herds of wild burros. If anyone is going to go visit Rhyolite and wants to do some hiking, historical, hiking in the area, you can walk on the raised rail bed through the desert from the Rhyolite, close to the Rhyolite um, depot, and walk right up to the point where the rail bed is. You go through some canyons, some beautiful scenery, up to the point where the rail bed is covered by mining debris from the modern mine.
Okay. I do have a question. I know there's a lot more history, of course, that can't be, covered during all of this. But the depot, when it was built, is an amazing building. But then it, kind of got new life. So was the brothel part of the casino, or is the casino part happened in the building later? Can you talk a little bit just about that?
Yeah,
Because I think it's interesting, you showing the rooms of the brothel upstairs.
well, this was, reported in a number of sources that upstairs from the casino was the brothel. And if you go into the VR tour in one of the rooms, you can click on a button and see a picture taken when it was a bar of the casino.
Okay. Okay. Do we know how long the casino ran? Kind of a general time period? Because it was it the 20s or 30s or
Dates are actually in the VR tour, but I don't have it
okay.
in my time.
Okay. Uh, And then we do have another question here. The first panoramic photo says Rhyolite was over the range. Was the range directly behind the tents or to the right of the photograph?
I would have to go back and look at that very specific image, so I'm sorry I can't answer that without doing it.
No. These are just great images, great information. Um, it, I just love personally the circus, the image of the circus tents, and actually how large it was. Because you read in newspapers about the traveling circuses that would come through Reno and Virginia City and different places, but I just never would have imagined the tent being that large, So
Three tents, yeah,
yeah,
three-ring circus.
yeah, it was very cool. Neal, do you have any questions or would like to um,
Well,
ask
well,
any?
I wanted to comment just a little bit. Maybe Howard can go ahead and elaborate if he's got a little bit of time there. But he had done marvelous work even before the AI had come up with the cameras and stuff. He was able to go ahead and document the inside of the Masonic temple there on Commercial Row, the oldest commercial building that we had, and be able to have something left as far as what that building was really all about. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is he as a educator, he had a class that he gave homework to, and what he had done is taken the now and then concept from photos and be able to stretch them out and morph uh, all of the in between. So they were able to take it from now all the way to the end, or vice versa. And there was one of the fellows that really had to go ahead and correct on the side of the, this was the V and T tracks, and it had a Model A going one direction and a Model A going the other. And that was the modern day traffic jam of that era. But when I took that photo, I was on the east side of the highway. I didn't want to pull a U-turn in the middle of stuff. Well, the student that was issued that one particular project, he went ahead and went to the other side and really improved on what the comparisons were. So
Well, thank you, Neal.
one
Those
heck of a
projects are still available, by the way, both the commercial building and the upstairs Masonic Lodge and the Reno Now and Then series are both
Yeah.
available on the All Around Nevada website.
Those were just wonderful. And these are things that people should investigate on, including your book on waiting for the cars. Boy, was that wonderful. Yeah, it just,
Thank you.
you should talk a little bit about the book. Yeah.
Well, the book published by the State Railroad Museum in Carson is a way to look at 3D um, without having a stereoscope. The pictures that Alfred Hart photographed in the construction of the Central Pacific were shot in stereo. That means he had a big camera with two lenses and produced stereo cards that you'd have to view if you had one, a wooden device called a stereoscope. Well, what we did was digitize the left and right image and combine them into one image that with the proper red and cyan colored eyeglasses you can see in 3D. So these paper glasses are included with the book.
And the
No, that's a
classes
great
came
book.
with the book.
Mhm. No, it's fascinating. And just, I know you, of course, have been dealing with photography for a long time, but what got you interested in working on these kind of projects? Because I know you travel around the world doing a variety of things. I guess what was your first project, or what has made you want to continue working on these projects, Howard?
Well, um, what I like about photography is its witness to history, the ability to uh, take a moment in time and replicate it in some fashion and communicate that moment to other people. We call that verisimilitude, uh, bringing forth the sense of being in a place without actually being there. So I like to investigate how emerging technologies can take photography and extend its ability to project this verisimilitude. That's how I got into virtual reality. That's how I get into 3D. And one of my biggest projects is a virtual reality exploration of the ancient monuments of Ireland. And that's a project I spend about half of my time on when I'm not working on Nevada-based projects. So that project is voicesfromthedawn.com, all one word, voicesfromthedawn.com. And that is done in cooperation with Irish government archaeologists.
Yeah, I've been to that site and it's beautiful. But just all of the projects you've done and you've given presentations. I loved when you it's been several years, but gave a talk on American Flats. That's a great one as well. I just want people to make sure they go to Howard's website, but can you just briefly talk a little bit about what you did? Because, it's definitely changed
Well,
since.
American Plat Mill was a silver and gold processing mill from the early 20th century that flourished for a few years, and as many ventures did, it then closed down. It was intended to bring new technologies to process the spills from the 19th and early 20th century mines in Nevada that could not be economically processed using new technologies that could extract the precious metals from them. but it too failed after a while. But it consisted of many, many buildings, and the buildings fell into disrepair, and they were a favorite place for young people for many generations to go to do things that young people like to do without the parents watching them. I won't get into that in any detail, but it was dangerous, and there was a lot of ways to kill yourself in the protruding rebar and the three-story falls through gaps in the concrete. So ultimately, the BLM, which owned the property, decided to remove that liability of having the ruins there, and they contracted me to create a virtual reality tour of all the buildings at American Flat, so as to create a historical legacy and to ameliorate their removal of a cultural heritage. So that that website is also found on all around Nevada. And also about mining history, we just developed a very extensive page on the Donovan Mill in Silver City, in which you can go into the main mill buildings in virtual reality and see all the machinery in operation, which is really interesting.
It is, as I say, if you haven't had a chance to go, people that are watching today, it's great. And got a tour, and they even did some demonstrations of the small stamp mills that are on site, and all the amazing work from their volunteers on their board. So I'll definitely want to check that out because it's fascinating. Um, I did have one more question. Do you remember what the movie was that promoted the bottle house?
It was called the Airmail.
The airmail. Okay. All right.
And
Well,
there's some stills from the Airmail movie in the website.
oh, okay.
And funny thing that you asked, Sherry, because it was at an event at this historical society where, you know where I'm going with this, where
Hmm.
the U.S. Representative um, met with me, and I said I would like help getting access to a person in the Library of Congress who can help me to digitize the partial copy that they are reputed to have of the mail. And he said someone will get back to you in the next couple of weeks. And uh, a year and 2 years later, I'm still waiting for that, but that's another story.
You're just still waiting. You're
I'm
still
waiting.
waiting. Howard, this was such a great program. Thank you so much for
Yes.
being our guest speaker today. I knew this would be, people would find it fascinating, and it's just a great program, and just all your passion and all the work that you've done on these different projects are preserving this history and allowing people to look at it in a different way. And I really love the merging of the historic with the contemporary, and then even laying the Sanborn map on there. That gives a great perspective too. So
It was wonderful, and I thank you, and I'm signing off.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Sherry.
you're so welcome, Howard. And as always, we always just love thanking again everybody for coming today. And thank you for Terry and John and Tim and just everybody that helps support us through the Washoe County Library System. And I'll send it back to you, Terry.
Well, you really brought Rhyolite to life, and that is exactly what I needed. Thank you. And it's been such an honor to have hosted this program. Thank you all for joining us, and a special thanks to Sherry Hazorn with the Nevada Historical Society, historian Neal Cobb, and John, our library system tech wizard, for making this event possible. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.